to this very, very special edition of Unlocking the Future with someone who heads global education in a sense, a colleague of mine because I was a scholar and will forever be indebted to the Rhodes Trust in shaping my academic career. Professor Elizabeth Case, CEO and Warden of the Rhodes Trust in Oxford at the moment, and obviously someone who I need to ask several questions over the next half hour as to what she thinks is the future of education in the world. I mean, the Rhodes Trust stands at the center of what we call a globalized education scenario. And it's dominated, it's shaped our imagination, our experience of what the education sector should be like. Firstly, Professor Kiss, thank you so very much for your time and joining this show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Very simple question. Every year, 200 scholars from around the world come to you, to Oxford, to the Rhodes Trust, to the various colleges, and each of us have so much to talk about in terms of positivity as to what we've gained. What about 2020? What about 21? How are you seeing things? What is the future according to you, at least in the short term?
Sure. Thank you so much. So as you can imagine, and I know this is true across India as it is across Oxford, everybody is furiously, feverishly contingency planning. So, we will, of course, in terms of our scholars from around the world, be guided by the university's ultimate decision about the Michaelmas term, which is the first term of the 2020-2021 academic year. But I'm happy to say that the committees that are working on this are still prioritizing an in-person arrival of students from around the world as sort of the plan A, if you will, recognizing that life will not be the same exactly as it has been as we've taken for granted. There will have to be some social distancing unless we have wonderful success with a vaccine. So that is certainly, that would be the best scenario is if one of the vaccines, there's many of them that are currently in human trials, including one from the University of Oxford right now. But if we don't have a vaccine, then we will have to figure out ways in which we keep our students safe, and we'll likely have some kind of hybrid teaching and learning system. But a lot of Oxford's teaching is small group, it's tutorial, it's seminars.
Yeah.
And so actually that is something you can do while respecting social distancing. And we know that that there is no substitute for actually being together physically, So if it's possible for our scholars to come to the UK, that is what we will make happen. And I very much hope that will be possible. So
it's music to my ears to hear that in-person is still priority A. I mean, as you know, I was planning a conference at Rhodes House in May, which did not happen. I'm still planning it next year, provided you allow me to. So obviously, in person is something that I am looking forward to going back to Oxford. Having said that, the kind of Rhodes, sort of stands for diversity, stands for multiculturalism. And the world is facing different challenges at different points in time. Each country has different challenges. Will those things be taken into consideration? That, okay, we will have a staggered response based on individual countries. How will you formulate such a policy?
Yes, absolutely. And so I just to make sure all of your viewers know, so the Rhodes Scholarship is now available to students from anywhere in the world. We have constituencies like India that select students from a particular country, and then we also have the Global Rhodes Scholarship, which is available to students from any country in the world that isn't already captured in our set of constituencies. So we are working with the individuals we call our national secretaries who organize selection to to, first of all, to make it possible to do selection virtually, because we may need for the 2021 cohort, it may be more difficult to do selection in person and make it, make it possible for candidates from anywhere in the world to come together. That may be tricky. There will be some countries that may be at peak later with the pandemic than has been, than the UK and the US and Europe. So we're going to have to be flexible. So for our incoming scholars, what we've told them is that if you have individual circumstances where it will be difficult for you to join us, we are always, this is always true, that we will respond to individual circumstances and see if we can defer a scholar for a year, for example. Oxford may or may not defer them. They may have to reapply to their course, but we will certainly support scholars who need who are not in a position to come. And, hopefully the university will be more flexible as well. With our selection, we also know that some universities, for instance, have not been able to or will not be able to complete this academic year in the normal fashion. So there will be some applicants amongst our pool, our natural pool of people who would be applying for the Rhodes, who might not be able to get their final transcript, or examinations will not have been held in the usual fashion. So we're going to have to take a more fine-grained approach to that and to figure out, in different constituencies, how do we respond? Do we say to somebody, you're eligible, even though by your age, you might not be eligible a year from now, we'll give you an exemption to apply a year from now? We may, in some cases, say you can apply on the basis of academic coursework you've already completed. So it won't be a one-size-fits-all, but basically we want to make it possible for young people who are excited about coming to Oxford and being a part of this incredible global leadership development community, for them to have a shot at coming.
I stand testimony as to what Rhodes can do and cater to individual needs, because I'm sure you heard from colleagues and from people like Bob that I lost my father the night I reached Oxford, and Rhodes Trust was kind enough to allow me to come back, settle back in India, and then rejoin a term later. So I missed Michaelmas, having what I faced, but then I came back in Hillary term, and I flowered because Rhodes Trust was there to stand by me. So I stand testimony to what the Rhodes Trust has done for me and for many other scholars around the world. One important question, Warden, is there is so much talk about economic issues plaguing education. I really want to know from you, from the trust standpoint. I was reading a newsletter that you had sent saying you have already extended the scholarship for some students who are unable to complete, which was fantastic. But I really need to know from you, what is the trust stand? Is the trust stable? Will we still see this amazing scholarship continuing the way we have experienced it for the next generation? Your take on the economic challenges facing us.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Boria, for sharing that very tragic and moving story of your own experience. And I'm so glad that the Trust was there to support you. It's what we want to do for every single scholar. So, and you have gone on to such an extraordinary career. So we're very, very proud to claim you as a Rhodes Scholar. So about the economic condition of the Trust, I am really, really happy to be able to share that thanks to the generosity of many, many Rhodes Scholars around the world and other donors as well. We have received donations over the past decade from people who are Rhodes Scholars and friends of the Rhodes. And as a result of that, our endowment is in very, very strong shape. We know that markets have been quite up and down, understandably, as a result of this pandemic. But our trustees had actually taken some money out of the endowment to kind of de-risk the endowment. They called it the rainy day fund. Nobody quite expected a rainy day as bad as what we have been experiencing, and particularly all of you in West Bengal. So, we were just thinking that the markets, we had been in an up market for a very long time. So as a result of that, and as a result of continued donations from the Rhodes Scholar community, we are really confident about being able to sustain our support for Rhodes Scholars. So as you mentioned, we have committed, our trustees have approved some additional emergency funding for scholars impacted by COVID-19. So we have scholars, for instance, who do research in a wet lab, and the lab has been closed. So it will take them longer to finish their degree. We are really committed to helping Rhodes Scholars complete their degrees. We also have people who were actually about to start their field work. I've been in touch with a number of scholars who are very, very sad because they were, literally it was March was the beginning of a break between Hillary and Trinity at Oxford, and they had a grant to go and do field work that was going to be critical for their dissertation. And of course, the travel ban, they couldn't do their field work. So we have assured scholars that we have made provision in our budget and in our financial forecast that if there is a delay, and we've done modeling of what if it's 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, before they can get back to the lab. So we've done even worse case scenarios as well, that we have set aside those funds so that they have the additional support so they can complete their degrees. And so by making that special provision, we're also ensuring that new scholars can join us and can continue to benefit from the Rhodes community. And I will say, actually, in case some of your viewers are interested, that we want to expand the Rhodes Scholarship in India. We currently award we currently award 5 scholarships a year. And my hope is that we can raise the money in the next few years to expand to at least 7. We get so many highly qualified applicants in India, and it really, it really would need to be more than 5 for Indian scholars to have the same sort of representation, if you will, within the Rhodes community as their numbers would merit. And so our hope is to expand to 7, maybe even 8. And so we are hoping to be able to, of course, it's hard to fundraise when you can't travel, but the University of Oxford has just recently created a matched challenge scheme where they will provide 1/3 of the funding if we raise 2/3 of the funding for new Rhodes scholarships. And so India, I just want to mention that India is one of our top target countries. Just in case any of your viewers are interested in talking to us about a gift to the Rhodes Trust, because I would love to make the Rhodes Scholarship available to more wonderful, bright, talented students from India.
Fantastic to hear, and I'm sure a lot of Indian industry, a lot of Indian corporates would want to listen to this and take up the challenge to providing more opportunities for people from this country. Nandan, who's my batchmate, if you know, is now heading the Rhodes Scholarship interview board here in India. So Nandan and I keep talking about the process going forward.
Yes.
Now, if I'm allowed to digress a little,
Sure.
You are in Oxford, and there is so much interest about the Oxford vaccine. We are following it with bated breath. Every news point coming out of Oxford, whether it is from Professor Hill or Professor Gilbert, anyone, we are consuming that around the world. What is the sense you are getting there? I mean, it sort of moves up and down. There was one contradictory article in Forbes, and then there was a rejoinder. And there, a lot of people, articles have come out in the British press. What is your sense, being an Oxford insider? Is there hope?
Yes, there is definitely hope. vaccines are such a tricky thing to develop. And so I do think that there is hope. And myself, I was trained as a philosopher, so I'm not speaking as somebody with medical or research expertise in this area. But our board chair, the chair of the Rhodes Trustees, is the Regius Professor of Medicine at Oxford. He is a Rhodes Scholar from Canada, Sir John Bell. And I actually was on Zoom with Sir John this morning. So I can kind of give you his latest take, which is that the Oxford vaccine continues to be very promising. They are getting results, another tranche of results at the end of this week. They are in human trials now. And as you probably know, there has been a very helpful negotiation with AstraZeneca, which is a UK-based pharmaceutical manufacturing company, along with partners, I believe, in India as well. So that if the vaccine, it probably won't be until July that we would know enough from these human trials to know whether it's worth starting to ramp up that manufacturing effort. But I think there is definitely still a great deal of hope for that vaccine. With all of the caveats that there has been, the history of vaccine development is filled with stories of vaccines that looked incredibly promising and then proved to be not quite as good as they need to be for them to be manufactured and administered globally. But Sir John also said that there are a number of very interesting new developments in the treatment side as well. There too, there have been some disappointments, some things that looked like they might be good treatments for coronavirus, for COVID-19, that did not prove very successful. But there are a number of trials that are quite promising, particularly drugs, including some that are long-standing drugs and treatments that have been used for other things. Including one that he said he thinks is already past patent, so it's a generic at this point. But people are testing it to see if these treatments could shut down what has been the biggest killer in COVID-19, which is that excessive immune response, the cytokine storm, where basically their whole immune system attacks itself. And that is what tends to then ultimately, in many cases, lead tragically to death. And so I think there's also some promising word on that front, and it may well be that we get some breakthroughs on the treatment side, which will enable more societies and economies and organizations to cautiously open up while we're still, testing the vaccine. But we'll see.
You are giving me some serious news points there, and while we do not expect 100% vaccine, and that's the story of vaccines, even if it is partially effective, that should be good enough. I mean, it's a 55-60%, as we've now known, being informed, intelligent observers, reading scientific literature, as long as it stops pneumonia, like what happened in the Oxford vaccine for animal trials.
Yes.
That is good enough to give us efficacy in this world. So if something in terms of a breakthrough happens by the end of the year, I think we as human civilization will be able to come back, and then scientific progress will keep happening. So at least we will be in a position to combat COVID-19, and the challenges and economies can open up. That's what we are expecting, whether it is from Oxford, whether it is from China, whether it is from the US. At least we need one breakthrough from human civilization. So great news, and we will wait with bated breath as and when the data comes out. Fingers crossed, something should happen. Last couple of questions before I let you go. One, I was reading that the UK is gradually opening up, and you have given some relaxations in lockdown. We have also started what we call Unlock 1 in India. what is the ground situation in Oxford? Cambridge has already announced online classes for the next calendar year. What is the ground situation in Oxford? I entirely agree that tutorials, smaller tutorials, very doable with social distancing norms. But what are your inputs? I mean, what is going to happen in the next 6 months?
Yes, great. So, by the way, just something to mention is that I know there has been a lot of press coverage about the University of Cambridge's announcement. And I have to say that if you read the actual announcement from the Vice Chancellor, it was much more nuanced than what the media covered. So the media ended up saying online for the whole year. What the Vice Chancellor there was saying was hopefully some blend of in-person and online. And the only thing they thought would need to go online was large lectures. So just a little shout out, because maybe some Cambridge alums are watching. So a little shout out to them that Cambridge is not shut down for the next year. The situation in Oxford is, you know, it's interesting. About half of our Rhodes Scholars and residents have stayed in Oxford. And so they are experiencing, first of all, this beautiful spring. It's been a stunningly beautiful spring here in England, and starting to have, you know, more businesses open. We have actually been talking at Rhodes House about whether we could reopen Rhodes House Garden with, you know, sort of advanced reservations so that scholars in small groups, you know, according to government guidelines, might be able to come, especially the scholars who are completing their degrees. It would be lovely for them to be able to come back to, even if it's not the house, to come back to the garden and have some time together. So Oxford itself is, you know, I'm sure cities in India are similar. You know, there's much less traffic on the roads. People are walking more and bicycling more. There's far fewer tourists. I mean, that actually has been a very dramatic change. But the university has continued to pursue teaching, learning. My husband is actually teaching at the Blavatnik School of Government this term. So the teaching has continued. Their examinations have continued. They've done examinations virtually. So actually the business of the University of Teaching and Learning has pretty much been maintained. So we've all been, you know, I think lots of people have learned new tools and new skills for doing this sort of teaching, and they are now. The university has announced that they have had 10 departments volunteer to open back up. So that's, I think all of those departments are laboratories. I mean, the ones, you know, because frankly for us at Rhodes House, we're working from home, but we're able to get most of our work done. But if you're working in a lab, you're not able to do that. And so all of the labs, other than the COVID-19 related labs, were pretty much closed down. They're now reopening 10 of those departments and labs. And the idea is to learn, you know, how do you do that? How do you maintain safety? What cleaning protocols do you need? You know, the devil is in the details of, you know, how do you get people safely? People are very nervous about taking public transport. So how do you make provision for people who don't live in the city to get to your lab? So many, many details to work through, but I was very proud of the university for starting that pilot program, because every single college, every single department will ultimately need to reopen. I know I'm a member of Balliol College, one of the Oxford colleges, and I know they currently have about 90 students living in college. But they're also thinking about, if all of our students came back, how do we create small, almost family units, you know, of under 10 students in the same staircase, for example, who could function as a family unit and, you know, be able to eat together, etc., to have a small community, even if we can't have mass gatherings. So there's all this sort of, I think, creative and innovative planning that's going on, and we'll be learning from that, and it'll get us ready for the best reopening we can manage for Michaelmas term.
Fantastic. My final question to you, Professor Case. I mean, my own area. I mean, I was delighted to hear the English Premier League starting on the 17th of June. The England versus West Indies cricket series is supposed to go on in July in bio-friendly sporting environments. So that gives me enormous hope as far as world sport is concerned. We've seen the Bundesliga start, and in the 2 weeks that we've seen play happen, we've not heard anything adverse. So people are getting used to the new normal, as we call it. So, my point is, this has humbled us all. It has made us realize basic human values, something we had started to take for granted in a way. My final question to you, as an academic, as a leader, a thought leader of society, every time there has been a pandemic, yes, we've suffered, but human civilization has come out triumphant. What is the kind of time frame you are giving yourself or the world? Shall we say 2020 is disruption? From 21, you are seeing a better world?
I certainly hope, and I don't have a crystal ball, but yes, I do think that by, a lot of things need to play out. The vaccine, the treatment, our ability to adjust our business practices. But I certainly think that by 2021, there's many scenarios in which by 2021 we can come back to some form of normality, I think we all need to be planning for different scenarios now. One of the things that one of the things I've learned, and this is an example of it actually, is being able to be interviewed via Zoom, is that there are things that we are learning from this pandemic that will be good tools to continue to use post-pandemic.
Absolutely. I mean, every day is a learning. Every day is a learning. Telemedicine, for example, taking care of our people. I mean, as I said, it has humbled us all. I mean, getting to speak to you in normal circumstances would not have been possible, but perhaps the pandemic has brought us closer in a sense. But sooner than later, as and when this world opens up, and I'm very optimistic that by the end of the year, we will have some intervention, whether it is a vaccine, whether it is a treatment, something will come. Science will triumph, and I will be able to come to Oxford come 21 and see you in person. Yes. Till then, we will keep in touch on email, on Twitter, on social media, on Zoom. But thank you very, very much, Anya, for your support, and thank you for your time today for this interview. We will put this out, and a shout out to the entire Rhodes community. Stay healthy.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Boria. We're very proud of you. It's been a real pleasure having this conversation with you. And I will quote another Rhodes scholar who said, "Stay positive and test negative." So may we all do that.
Thank you so much. You take care. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye-bye.